the fear of failure or how to use it. Now, let's face it, everyone's afraid of failing. Yeah, we all are afraid of some level of failure. There's also a fear of success, which is a different problem, but we're not going to cover that tonight. We'll cover that another time. What we're going to focus on tonight is the fear of failure. Now, I'm going to cover quite a lot on this tonight, and I want you to really think about what I'm saying, because it's not as simple as it sounds, this. And there's a lot of reverse psychology involved in thinking about this, because we have no choice but to constantly fail. We have to fail all the time to get somewhere, because that is just the law of averages. Yeah, the law of averages says you're going to try something 100 times, and out of those 100 times, you'll get it right X amount of times. So you've got to fail more times than you will succeed. But to allow that to happen in your own head, you've got to get your ego under control. Yeah, because the thing that screws you over, and especially men, as soon as the male ego is seen to be wrong, it's like, oh, I can't let anyone see that. Oh God, you know what I mean? How could I be wrong? You know, I'm me. I'm like the king of the kitchen world, you know, or king of whatever. And this is what our ego tricks us into thinking. So we have to get that under control, like straight away, because if we don't, we're never going to be able to fail. And if we can't fail, we can't succeed. Like I've just said, look how many quotes you're going to send out. Out of 10 quotes, you're going to lose at least 6 or 7 of them. So you're going to have to fail. To get the 3 or 4 to win jobs, you're going to have to take the losses as well, you know. But this is where people can't condition themselves in the right way to, you know, like people like in the academy groups to see it, oh, I've just lost this job, oh, I've lost that job. Like, fucking hell, mate. You're going to lose loads, right? Get over it. Keep going. Tell us after 15, 20 jobs how many you've won. That's your conversion rate. Don't come crying every time you lose a job. You know, it's going to happen to all of us all the time, you know, and this is where we've got to use fear properly, yeah? Because what the issue is with the fear of failure is people, well, let's not call it the fear of failure for a minute. Let's just use the word fear. We all fear something, yeah? What are you afraid of right now? Just stop and ask yourself for a minute. What am I afraid of right now? What is that? Am I afraid of something that might happen this week? Am I afraid of something that might happen this month? Am I afraid of something that might happen this year? That is what people at the basic level, and the people that fail, that is where their fear comes from. They are fearing something might happen. Yeah. Now, successful people fear that something won't happen. And that's the difference between successful people and unsuccessful people. Successful people fear that something won't happen. So they are looking at the big picture. Yeah. Because the big picture is that business. Like I said to you quite a number of times over the last few weeks, you've got to look at, how do you get to be the number one in your area? Now, if you want to use your ego and the fear of failure to you know, reverse psychology them fuckers and use them to your own advantage, is what you should be doing if you're an academy member, is going, right, how do I get to be the number one in my area? Right, so let's look around. How many reviews have the kitchen companies around me got? Not the nationals, just the ones around me. How many reviews have they got? How many reviews have they got? How many case studies have they got? How many blogs have they got? How good is their website? How good is their social media? Now, work out where the bar is around you in your area and go, right, this guy's there. Pick 10 of them, and then you've just got to get above. You've just got to get above them, because so what you then create is something that you want to achieve. Yeah, this is where vision is important, and that's why when we get you to join the academy, you do your declaration. Where do you want to be in 5 years' time? We don't ask you to do that because we're nosy, and we don't ask you to do that because of any other reason. What we're trying to do with you at that point is make you see where you could go. Yeah. Now, what you should be doing is attaching the fear to that. Yeah. So the thing that you should be worrying about is that that won't happen. Yeah. Now, if you're worrying about, if your fear is around making a payment this week, or make sure you got cash flow, and the short-term things that are always going to happen on repeat no matter what, if you're fearing these things constantly, you will never see that you're not going to hit this big target here. So, for instance, in my head, I set out early on to go, right, every time I've set out in business, with a business, and I've had businesses that have failed, and quite a few of them. What I've done at the beginning is I've gone, right, that's the goal for this business. That's where this business needs to get. So every day when I'm waking up, I'm not waking up going, oh, these minor pieces of shit here, that might or might not happen. That's not driving my fear. My fear is being driven by, I said I'd get there in 5 years. And today I feel like I'm not on my way there. So I need to get there. So you start pedaling through all the small things that worry you very quickly, because you realize that actually none of this really matters. This is just shit I need to do. And I just need to get on with it. Because if I don't get on with it, I ain't going to get there. And what I'm worried about is not getting there. Do you see what I mean? So the picture is so much bigger to people who are successful. So they don't sweat on like the bits of shit that happens, like, oh, this customer's whinged about that and they've said that. I'm not saying you don't care, but you don't get emotional about every single thing that happens. You're not like jumping around all the time, like getting emotional about stuff constantly and worrying about minor stuff. Because if you're successful, you're doing the right things. You're making sure that you got your scorecard done, your cash flow sheet, all these types of things that we teach you to do. And you're focusing on the big picture. Yeah. All right. So I've won a job. I've lost a job. I've won a job. I've lost a job. I've lost a job. I've won a job. I've lost a job. I lost a job. I lost a job. I've won a job. I won a job. Do you get what I mean? But we're not crying every time we lose the job. The cash flow might go a bit tight in this month here, but we go, right, okay, well, how do we get out of that? Okay. But as soon as we sort that problem, we get back on with the big picture, because the fear needs to come from not achieving the big goal, not trying to avoid the shit here all the time. The shit is going to happen. You're going to have jobs that you lose. You're going to have deliveries that go wrong. You're going to have fucking issues on site. You're going to have customers that just want to be a twat. These things are going to happen. If you let all those things stop you all the time and your toys are out the pram every time it happens, you're not going to get to that bigger goal, are you? Yeah. And the bigger killer with these things is, if your goal is to survive this week or this month, then that isn't part of the bigger picture, is it? Look at what we said 2 weeks ago when I said you can retire a millionaire if you put that £20,000 a year into your ISA. Now, we're not going to go through all that tonight. Go back and watch that Facebook Live. I've sent everyone the link out to it. It's still in the group, and it's on Spotify. It's on YouTube. So go back and watch that piece of content. That is the big goal, or should be, for everyone. That money, we make that money and put that to one side. And in 20 years, 15 years, whenever it might be, we'll retire wealthy. We'll retire with money in the bank, tax-free earnings, and off we go. That is taking care of the big picture, yeah? Because then we don't sweat the small stuff every day. And what we are also not doing is, and again, I speak to some academy members who go through cycles. Now, if I've had this conversation with you recently, you'll think I'm talking about you. But I've had this conversation with quite a few people. This is a common problem. And it's not something that, it happens a lot, basically. Now, what people do, they focus on immediate danger. They focus on this week or this month or this quarter even, or even the next 6 months, still a short period of time. They're measuring success in such a small window. And that's why sometimes when we get people that join the academy and then after 3 months are like, oh, well, it doesn't happen a lot, don't get me wrong. But we've had the odd person that comes in and they're like, oh, it's not really working for me. And I'm like, you've only just fucking joined, and they're like, oh, I've been in for 2 months. I'm like, if you think a business is going to build in 2 months, you're you're better off leaving anyway, mate, because if you're that deluded, this isn't for you. Because what we're trying to build here is such sustainable businesses for over a long period of time. So you have to be realistic. But when your measure of success is to avoid the failure of this week or next month, the problem is with that, you will do it. So what you've got to do is, the problem here is if your plan is to survive next month, you are going to survive next month, right? So what happens is, when you survive next month, you go, oh, fucking hell, thank God for that. And then if you have a better month after that, what happens then is your foot comes off the gas, because the danger and the fear were attached to surviving in that month. Yeah. So what happens is, you get out of that month and you go, oh, thank God for that. Right. Right. And you just take your eye off the ball, because you're not looking where you should be looking. You should be looking up here. What you're doing is you're looking here. You're looking so short term, and you're looking so short term that you're just not seeing the longer term or the bigger picture. So your fear is here in the immediate term, and you're fearing survival. You're fearing not surviving, should I say. Whereas what you need to be doing is knowing what real success looks like in 5-10 years from now, and aiming to that and going, that is what I'm doing. And my fear is attached to this. Yeah. Like Jacob's put in the group, in the chat, I'm afraid of letting my wife and kids down when I transition over, and I'm scared of not having enough money there to provide while I transition to all of my own work. Yeah, it's a valid fear, but it's still a very short-term goal. You're focusing on not transitioning over properly, but the transition is just it's a very early part of the process. And the danger that you've got there is that you'll focus on the transition so much that when you get there, you'll potentially take your foot off the gas, because you'll celebrate at that point and go, oh, thank fuck for that, I've done it. And then 2 months after that, you're in the shit. And this is something that we see quite a lot in the academy. I say a lot, it's not a lot, it's a handful of people, but it's usually the same suspects, because there's a short-term plan because there's a panic. Yeah. Then we suddenly things switch back on, and it's like, right, let's get going again and let's get on it. Right, come on, we're having it. And then 6 months later, we're fucking back to square one. And that's because the plan was always just about survival and getting out of the shit, or a short-term goal. And the fear was attached to this situation. Yeah. So when the fear passes, we take our foot off the gas. When the fear is attached to a plan that's 5 or 10 years in the future, it's always there. You are not going to get away from it, because every day you're going to wake up and you're never actually going to get there, because you're always going to keep moving it and evolving that plan, and evolving that fear grows. And this isn't an unhealthy thing to fear that, but it makes you realize, right, I've always got to work hard. And if I'm going to work hard, and I've always said to people, if you're going to work hard doing labor-only work, you might as well work hard having your own thing and your own little supply and fit business. Why wouldn't you? Just for the sake of taking on a little bit more work, right? It's a bit more admin, but over time, once you got through that transition, you're away and you're earning money and got a lifestyle that you wouldn't have had before. So you've got to get the fear and put it quite far in the future, and worry about not becoming that version of yourself and not having that business that you really want to have. Not just planning to do something that you're probably going to do in the next 6 months, or is attached to the next week or month. You've got to move that fear right into the future. And every day, fear not becoming that person, not becoming that business, not having that X amount of cash in the bank that you want to have, not investing that money into your savings. These are big things that you are not going to do next month. But if you fear them every day, every week, every month, you will keep your feet to the fire, because you'll have to. Yeah. And that's how you'll use the fear properly. Yeah. So basically, it's getting the fear from short term and small things, and getting it into the long term and the big things. Yeah. I fear KBB Supply Services not becoming what I want it to become. I fear the academy not becoming what I want it to become. But they're not going to become those things in the next 12 months or 2 years or even 5 years. So therefore, I'm sort of resigning myself to the fact that I'm in it for the long run. And my fear every day is that it doesn't become what I want it to become. It's not about making payroll at the end of the month. It's not about worrying about anything trivial in the grand scheme of things. It's like, this is how you engineer your brain to use the fear properly. And again, because the fear of failure has to be right in the future. It has to be on the big things. So write down where you want to be in 5 years. If you've got a pen, write it down now. You go back to your declaration, pin it on the wall, and be fearful of not getting there. But not being fearful, like, of sending a fucking loom with your quote. Oh, I don't want to send a video with my quote because the customer might see me again. Like trivial shit that you're worried about and fearing. Like, fucking hell, really? And just other trivial things that people worry about all the time. So that's that. That's where you need to be putting the fear. Your fear shouldn't be afraid of failing in the short term. So we'll move on to this next point. So your fear shouldn't be. Most people are afraid of failing in the short term. Yeah. So what if my social media posts are rubbish? What if I'm not good at selling? What if my first quote isn't accurate? What if my first case study isn't good enough? What if my cash flow sheet tells me something I don't want to see? Let's get this straight. These things will happen. Not might happen. They will happen. Your first social media post will be shit. At first, you won't be good at selling. Your first quote won't be accurate. You'll lose money. You might make more money. Who fucking knows? But you've got to start. What if my first case study isn't good enough? No, it'll probably be shit. You know what I mean? But what if my cash flow sheet tells me that I'm skint? I knew that anyway. But I've got to start somewhere, and that's okay. Because these aren't failures. These are stepping stones. And these are the uncomfortable stepping stones that we all must step over to get somewhere better. The real fear, the one that should keep you up at night, isn't about messing up a post, a video, or a quote and the trivial things. It's about waking up in 10, 20, or 30 years and never becoming the person that you set out to be. That's the real fear. It's all right, worrying about what's going to happen in the next 12 months, but even that's a short period of time. Like I said on the other video we did about becoming a millionaire, that's what you should be worrying about. You should be worrying every week and every month that you are not making steps towards what you want to do in the long term, where you're not going to become the person that you want to become. Not waking up by the time you do retire, going, right, I'm whatever age, I'm ready to pack it in, or I have to pack it in. Again, I always say this to people, whether you like being on the tools or not, you're fucking coming off them at some point. Yeah, it's happening whether you like it or not. By choice or force, you're coming off the tools. So by the time you get there, you want to make sure that you've got some sort of financial stability where you don't have to pick the tools up anymore. And imagine getting to like 20 years down the line from now and you go, fucking hell, I remember watching them Facebook Lives and Aaron was saying these things and I did fuck all. I haven't done it. And here I am. And his words are now ringing around my head. I don't want my words ringing around your head because you didn't listen and you couldn't be asked. And you were afraid of such short-term things that really in the grand scheme of things didn't matter because you couldn't get the fear in the future. You were always fearful of things here instead of things here. Just don't be that guy, please. So where should your fear be? Like I've already said, what if I never build the business that I dream of? What if I never get off the tools and I'm still working in 20 years when I really wanted to be off the tools, but I can't afford to come off the tools, like I've just said? What if I never retire with the income that I wanted? Time will run out at some point. At some point, time will run out. And while you've got time, use it. What if I let my family down because I played it safe? What if I made no risks? I never I'm not trivializing that the academy. The academy is 225 quid a month plus VAT at the standard sort of package where you get your website and everything. If you want to add other things on, you can do. But let's just say you've got a kitchen business and you just want to get it up and running. 225 a month plus VAT, no upfront costs. And some people like sometimes turn around and go, and I'm not calling anyone. I'm not saying anything derogatory here, but they worry about that cost. And I think, and to me, it's a red flag because if you're not going to really if your life depended on earning that extra 225 quid a month plus VAT a month, and giving yourself an opportunity to do something like this, you clearly don't have the mindset anyway to get somewhere. Because if some people turn around and go, well, whatever the reason is for not affording it, and I understand that money's tight and there's a cost of living crisis and all the rest of it, but my belief is that your life does depend on it. So if it matters, you'll do it. And that's the attitude I've always had. If it matters, you will find a way. If it doesn't, you'll find an excuse. And some people will say, well, that's not fair. Well, it is, because you ask any successful person, they'll say, well, I didn't have it fucking easy. I didn't have it easy. Those of you that know, what my story is, I've been in the shit. I've had times where I couldn't afford things, and I've just kept going. I've just kept going. Like I say, if you care, you find a way. If you don't, you find an excuse. And and I sometimes, speak to Lee sometimes, say, people talk about this cost or whatever, and they think, oh, well, I'll do it a different way. And it's like, well, how? And what are you planning to do? And why are you trying to be smart? And there's all these things that run through people's heads that are just not useful. The academy puts everything in front of you that you need, and it's just such low cost. And I think there's a lot of delusion out there. People think that it's easy. They think there's other things that are like the academy out there, and there just isn't really. But again, who are we to question people? But I just, what my frustration is? I want to see people become successful. Successful people like to make other people successful. And when you hear people talk themselves out of things, you just feel sorry for them. You're just like, it's just a shame that, because, and I don't mean to be patronizing, but it's just like, you've got a family, look after them, put your neck out a bit, make it happen, mate, because if you make it work, and with our help you will, your family will be proud of you. You'll do a great thing in the grand scheme of things. So again, you've just got to sometimes grab your balls and get on with it. And stop worrying about, failing at small trivial things, and start worrying about the big stuff. Start worrying about the big stuff. And they're the fears that should drive you. What if I let my family down and I play it safe? Well, don't fucking play it safe. At least have a crack at something. And at least if you get there in, again, it might take you a couple of years to get yourselves properly up and running. Like the elite boys, there's loads of you that are doing well. But I'd say that the people that come in, probably takes them 6 to 12 months to get properly up and running. And once they get going and they listen to us and they trust us, they're off. They're in a good place very quickly if they listen and they don't do these things, what we're saying about, only trying to get out of immediate danger all the time. And then as soon as they're out of immediate danger, they take the foot off the gas and end up back in the shit 5 minutes later. It's just a boring process that people do sometimes. Cycle is really repetitive. So when you fear these things more than the short-term discomfort of failing a task, you start to see the daily struggles as minor bumps and not roadblocks. So when you're focused on the big stuff, so think about the people, and we'll all be one of them at some point, where we're worrying about the tasks that we've got to do today, tomorrow, next week. I'm a bit worried about doing my first blog and things like that. And I'm worried about doing this because I've never done it before. I've not used a laptop that much, but get over it, pick it up and get on with it. But when you're focusing on this big thing, the small things become fairly trivial because you're just like, I just need to do it. I just need to get on with it. Posting on social media, people overthink this to fuck. It's just trivial. Just get on with it. There's loads of stuff in the academy to help you doing that. The first quote being off, who cares? You'll learn over time. A bad case study, your next one will be better. Failure isn't the enemy, it's the teacher. When you were fitting kitchens for the first time, did your first kitchen or bathroom you ever fit look perfect? Was it really, really, really amazing? It wasn't. You might think it was, but it wasn't. So, and this is where the learning process of people that are really, really good at what they do, they got there. They didn't just land there. It took them time to get there. And this is where you've got to be looking at it yourself, going, I will make some shit post on social media, and I'll look back and laugh at them in a few years. My first quotes might not make me the money that I thought because I missed bits, and I was getting used to the process, but I learned case studies and stuff like that. I remember quoting when I first started, it's a fucking nightmare. I missed this out, lost 500 quid here, lost 200 quid there. It's annoying, but you learn over time and you stop these things. So reframing failure is the truth that you need to accept is that you'll always start badly. Everything's going to fail at first. But this is where most people go wrong. They don't allow themselves to be bad at something first. They won't let themselves be bad at it. Their ego convinces them that they're already doing fine. And this is where I get on some interesting points now. Your ego kids you. Everyone's ego tells them they're doing well. Yeah. Your ego's there to say, we're right, we're correct, we're good at what we do. Your ego is the thing that's always making you feel good, but sometimes it's through lies. And we've got to be a really, really big person to stand there and know, am I lying to myself here? Or am I being honest with myself? The ego convinces you you're doing fine when you're not. That's the trick with the ego. It's when you're not, and it still tells you you're doing fine. You need to get to grips with that, because when there's danger and your ego don't let you see it because you're telling yourself everything's fine or that you're doing fine because you won't admit that you're not. But again, you've still got to be bad at stuff. You've got to be bad at stuff, but let your ego fuck off and leave you to it. We need to be bad at this for a little bit so we can get good at it later. But people also go wrong by normalizing mediocrity because it's comfortable, because we've all been there, and we all get to a point and then it becomes normal. Then we all get to another point, it becomes normal. We all get to another point, it becomes normal. But there's a line that we all want to sort of get to where we go, right, if we're not at the line where we want to be and we're not pushing hard, then we are subconsciously accepting mediocrity. Yeah. We are not quite where we want to be, and we're starting to accept it. That is the real failure. Staying the same is the real failure. Every single challenge that you face in business is an opportunity to move you closer to the bigger goals. If you fear looking stupid, if you fear looking stupid more than you fear never achieving your dreams, you're already losing. Yeah. So you've got to sometimes go, well, I wasn't very good at that. That's just tough shit. But we move closer to our dreams when we can use that to our advantage. So the most dangerous trap with all this, and some of you have heard me say it before, is playing not to lose. So that there's two ways you can play a game. You can play not to lose, or you can play to win. Yeah. And there's two different strategies there. So when you're playing not to lose, this is what it looks like. And this is a cycle that repeats. So you scramble to fix an urgent problem, usually cash flow. You celebrate like you've won the game, and then you stop doing what was working. You slip back into old habits, and then the next crisis hits. The panic and the scramble again, that's the cycle that people go around, and that's called playing not to lose. And this is what I was alluding to before when I was talking about planning just to survive, because we are always trying to fix an urgent problem. Then when we've fixed it, we celebrate it. Then we go, oh, fuck it, I'm out of danger now. So the fear goes away, because the fear was attached to fixing that urgent problem, and that urgent problem hurting us. Now, when we got past that urgent problem, we were like, right, I've done it. Then we stopped doing what we were doing. then we slip back in very quickly. Then the next crisis hits. And so the cycle repeats. The cycle destroys progress. That cycle eats most people live in that cycle, and it just certainly destroys progress, and it destroys businesses as well, and it keeps you stuck in the same place for years or even your entire career, repeating the same year over and over and over again instead of building progress. And the worst part, you'll tell yourself that you're moving forward when really you're just on a treadmill, because people will turn around to me and go, oh, Aaron, I've been at it for 15 years, mate, 20 years, and all that. And I'm like, oh, have you? So where's the growth? So if you've been at it for 20 years, where's the 20 years worth of growth? Or have we earned at this level for 20 years? Because if we've earned at that level for 20 years, there's no growth. There's no experience. You just repeated the same year over and over and over again. That's not impressive. And I'm not saying that you need to, but always growing exponentially. But what I'm saying is, you want to be, if you're not living your ideal life, then you need to be growing, don't you? Because you're not there yet. So once you get there, you can plateau it if you want to. That's up to you. But if you're not there, you need to keep going. And there's no, and this is the ego again with people. Oh, I've been at it for years, mate. I've been doing it for a long time. Like, have you? Fucking what have you got to show for it? We want to see things. We want to see progress. We want to see what's happened. Where's the intrinsic result of what you've done? If you can't produce that other than words and bollocks, you're not impressing me. You're only kidding yourself. And that's something that I'm very aware of, and I'll call people out on at the drop of a hat, because I can't be arsed with it. It's just you or someone rubbing their own fucking ego and thinking that people are impressed when what their fear has been attached to all the time is not the big picture. They haven't had a big picture. They don't know what the big picture is. They've never sat and thought about where they want to be in 5 years. They just survived, and they've just aimed at survival each week and every month and every year. And then when they get to New Year's Eve, they probably just run into the next year, not planning the next year, not thinking about how I'm going to grow next year, what I'm going to do next year. And this is not what we want, especially if you're not living your ideal life. And statistically, not a lot of people are. So again, if you want to be in the top percentile, you've got to think like this. This is not something that's up for debate. You have to think like this. So how do we break the cycle? So here's the action plan. If you want to grab your pen and paper, I'll send this out as well with the content, because this will be going on to YouTube and Spotify, so you'll find it in the description there as well. So breaking the cycle, this is the action plan. So number one is we need to fear the right things. Fear staying in the same place more than you fear the short-term failures. Yeah. Fear never reaching your big goals instead of looking bad today. Fear wasting years of mediocrity more than making mistakes. So just to recap on those things, we want to fear staying in the same place more than we fear short-term failures. Yeah. We want to fear never reaching big goals instead of fearing looking bad today. We want to fear wasting years in mediocrity more than we fear making mistakes. So that is what we need to move the focus of the fear to. We need to shift it to the not trivial things to the big things, and accept that the trivial things are going to trip you up all the time. And this is where people don't make progress, let's say, because they are constantly fearing things that are going to go wrong anyway. If you're programming your brain to fear something, and you constantly get that confirmation bias that the things you feared are always happening, because there'll always be levels of failure around you all the time. And if they're the things that you're afraid of, you're fucked, aren't you? Because they're always going to happen. So you're always going to confirm to yourself that you're failing, which will keep you in a perpetual cycle of failure and survival mode and mediocrity. And that's not why you're here. So number two is accept. This is sort of on the same point, really. But accept that you will struggle at first. You will do bad posts. They're expected. You will have messy cash flow. It's part of the process. You will have your first surveys will be awkward, of course they will, but you don't get to skip the bad phase. You just have to go through it. The struggle is real, and you'll always start in the struggle. If you're not prepared to start in the struggle, and I think this is where people, again, like, it doesn't annoy me, I see it a lot, but people start off on a venture and think that the second they start, all the magic just starts happening. Not forgetting that the minute that you decide to go and do something, that's the start of the journey. And at the start of every journey, it's always hard. Like, I was talking to someone this morning, actually, and they were like, "Oh, it just feels like it's never going to fucking happen." It wasn't even about the academy, it was about something else. And I'm like, every time you start, if you started running 10K, in the first 1K, it would feel like this is going to last forever. Yeah, this is going to take fucking forever to get to 10K. But when you get to 4K and you get to 5K and you go, "Oh, I'm halfway there, right?" Do you see what I mean? It's where you get your mind and put your brain at different parts of the process. But you will start in the struggle always. Like when you started off as an apprentice, like when you started off the first day at any job, it's always difficult, at the beginning. You've got to keep going so that you don't get to skip the bad phase. You'll never skip it. You have to go through it. That's number 2. Accept you will struggle at first. Number 3 is stop playing not to lose and start playing to win. Do the work even when there's no immediate fire to put out. If you're just doing work today because you've got a problem to solve tomorrow, you will not stay consistent. You've got to keep pushing even when things are going well. Don't let success make you complacent. Because again, what did I say to people before we say people have a danger here and they have fear attached to this danger? When they get past it, they take the foot off the gas. Because as soon as they feel like they're out of danger, they take the foot off the gas to get complacent. But they're just surviving in the short term. They're not coming, and 12 months ago by these people, and they'll come back and go, "Yeah, well, I was doing well, but now I'm not." And I'm like, "Well, why?" "Well, because you've stopped doing the things you were doing here that were working for you, because you've got a bit of money in the bank. You've then started spunking that money. You've stopped doing the stuff that was working, and now you've slipped back. But now this time you've gone back further than where you were before." It's a common thing with business people, and this is not. I don't know. There's different types of people that do this, but yeah, it's just a trait, unfortunately, in people that have cyclical success. But it gets boring. Let me tell you, it gets boring because people around you get fed up of listening to it as well. "Oh, this is going to happen, that's going to happen," and it never fucking does. So in the end, you start losing people because you're just not really following through on what you're supposed to be doing. So, you have to start delivering results at some point. Is the message there? And the only way you're going to do that is to stay consistent. And that means even when things are going well, keep working hard because you want to get as far in front as you can. And progress is progress at the end of the day. And that brings us on to number 4. Measure progress on the big picture. Stop focusing on daily wins and losses and track long-term growth, your scorecard. Instead of worrying about one bad post, look at your engagement over 6 months, 12 months, and so on, like social media. Like people will focus on, "Oh, I got this engagement on one post." It's like, so, "Oh, look at my stats for last week." Well, let's look at it over 6 to 12 months and let's see what's really going on. Because looking at it as such a small picture, just no use. Instead of fearing one bad survey or quote, measure your conversion rate over time. Losing a quote does not define who you are. Come to me and tell me your conversion rate when you've done your first 15 to 20 quotes. That is accurate data. Not one, "Oh, I've just done my first quote." I understand that the first quote and people, this is one thing that I always think with people, like they emphasize, like they'll come to me and go, "Oh, I just done my first quote with KBB. I'm going to see how it goes," and all the rest of it. And I'm like, you need to see the opportunity here. It's not about how the first one goes. It's about engaging with something properly and doing a number of them and having some proper data. Because what these people will do, who say things like that, They're already looking for a reason not to do it. And that's what I think when people say, well, I've got this first one and see how it goes. And what do you mean fucking see how it goes? Whether it goes right or wrong, it doesn't fucking matter. You're here to capitalize on an opportunity. Just do that. Stop worrying about what the first what might happen with the first one or the second one. And this is where they either really don't understand how to measure success, which is probably the case, but the bigger thing is that they are already looking for a reason to fail. They're already in fear of failure. Yeah. So they're going, oh, they sort of hope it goes wrong because then they can say, well, I didn't do it because I did my first one and there was a slight issue or there was a slight problem. And that's why I didn't do it, everybody. Everyone listening to my bullshit. And this is what people tell themselves. Whereas, you just jump in and engage with things and do them properly and get proper data over 10 jobs, 10 quotes, all these types of things. And this is why, again, people bounce around from thing to thing to thing to thing to thing, because they never give anything a fair chance. And even if there is problems, they're not mature enough to know that there just will be problems with everything. Nothing's perfect. But you've got to have confidence and know you've got to do it for your own reasons. You've got to be in it for yourself. Which brings me on to number 5. Stay humble and stay hungry. Motivation fades over time. Motivation to do things does fade. And this is where I look at the people around me a lot. I don't like excited puppies. And I say this to my team all the time. I don't like people that are too enthusiastic because enthusiasm never lasts. I have it a lot. Some people are overly enthusiastic and they think I enjoy it and I don't. Because when someone's overly enthusiastic about something, it's like a firework display. It'll go out in a minute. That enthusiasm will go in a minute. It won't last. And motivation's a bit like that. It does fade. But the one thing that needs to stay is the discipline. The discipline has to stay. Because if the discipline doesn't stay, everything goes with it. Motivation can fade. But once we get something moving with momentum, discipline needs to remain. And this is where, when people join the academy or any business venture, it's always exciting at first. Everything's exciting when it's new, yeah, when it's shiny, when it's all brand new in its box. Never, oh, look how fucking great this is, and you're telling people about it. So motivation comes in bags when you're in that mindset, because you're like, right, I'm really up for this now. I'm really going to do this. But the discipline starts to wane because we're having this bias that it's not working. It's not working. But what's not working is that you haven't stayed disciplined. So you need to stay humble and stay hungry no matter what's happening. Motivation will fade and discipline needs to stay. Keep your eyes on the real fears. Never settling, never stopping, and never letting your dreams slip away. And sometimes your dreams will feel further away. Sometimes they'll feel closer. That will all be how you frame things in your mind, and what you're actually doing to get close to them. If you're doing nothing to get close to them, they're obviously further away. If you're doing things to get close to them, they're going to be closer, obviously. So that's it. So we had breaking the cycle was 1, fear the right things. 2, accept that you will struggle at first. 3, stop playing not to lose and start playing to win. Number 4 was measure progress on the big picture, not on the small things. And number 5 was stay humble and stay hungry. The main point of that one was motivation will fade, but discipline needs to stay, and that needs to win the day. So the final thought on this one is the cost of staying the same. You don't fear writing. You don't fear writing a bad blog post. You fear writing none at all and never building authority. You don't fear messing up a sales meeting or anything like that. You fear never learning how to sell and being stuck working for someone else forever, or in the labor only space. You don't fear bad cash flow for a month. You fear running a business that's never profitable because you refuse to look at the numbers. So ask yourself, what's really scarier, failing today or waking up years from now realizing that you didn't even try? Write down the biggest fears that you've been holding back and then take one action this week to move you towards your goal. Those of you in the academy know exactly what to be doing. You've got access to absolutely everything that you need to be successful. There's literally no excuses. Even if it means failing in the short term, your future self is counting on you. The people around you are counting on you to be brave enough to fail, and they won't judge you. You shouldn't judge yourself. Let your ego die, and use the fear of failure in the right way, and be afraid of failing on the big picture and not the small trivial stuff. Okay, so that's that.